Hello and welcome. In this video we'll talk about two areas of interest. The first of these is called tables of correspondences, so I'll speak very briefly on that subject. I'll begin by saying that you may want to make a mental note that the Hebrew alphabet consists of three groupings of letters that come together to make a total of 22 letters. In this alphabet, the letters each have a separate meaning of its own. Each have a separate meaning, and each letter has one or more numerical values. The Hebrew alphabet will not be discussed here in detail because it is a separate study in and of itself. Suffice it to say, however, in that alphabet there are three mother letters, which correspond to three of the four elements, meaning earth, air, fire, and water. The next grouping contains 7 double letters, which correspond to the 7 traditionally known planets that are in the Tree of Life. And the final grouping consists of 12 single letters, corresponding to the 12 signs of the zodiac. As you might surmise, these letters are aligned with those three groupings of associated information. If you find this interesting, there are additional sources of information and study on the Hebrew alphabet that are available to those who are willing to take the time to do a thorough search and study. I found it to be impractical to try to show the tables on video, the tables of correspondences, but I wanted to make you aware that there is a link to these tables on the first page of the website humbleseeker.org. In that link, if you click on it, you may browse through the three sets of tables of correspondences as you wish. Be aware that the tables were too wide to fit on the screen, so any continuation of information was placed so that each table is under the previous table. It should also be noted that the second table deals with those planets and other bodies that were traditionally known, which group included the moon and sun. Traditionally meaning known in early days, ancient times, while the illustration depicts the planets more currently known in the scientific community. I trust that you'll find the tables interesting. Let us now go from that subject and consider the book called The Pilgrim's Progress. This book tells a beautiful story. It tells of a person who was willing, should it become necessary, to give up everything and everyone, even those he loves dearly, in order to follow and serve God. This is a true seeker. Believe me when I tell you that there are exceedingly few in the world today, even among those who consider themselves devout, who would be willing to give up their friends, their jobs, or perhaps even their families, if necessary, to be able to follow the path that God offers them and to live a life of service as an instrument of God. It may never be needed that you give up all that the character in this book relinquished. It may not even be needed that you give up anything. Be assured, however, that if you are a serious seeker who definitely wants to serve and are committed, then eventually in this life or future one chosen by your higher self, it will be needed that you are at least willing, deep in your heart, to give it all up in order to serve. Don't be alarmed at these things you're learning. It's not required that such a person wake up some morning and drastically and dramatically change their entire life. Such changes are always made by personal choice by the individual, and they usually happen very gradually, often over a period of many years, decades, or even lifetimes. No person is ever asked to give more than they are able. Be assured, therefore, that God will never tell you that you must do such a thing. Remember, we're all agents of free will. In fact, God has set up the law that states, as you sow, so shall you reap. And other than that, unless we request it, there is no interference in our individual lives. Much of our future destiny, and notice that the word is destiny and not fate. In other words, that which we will reap tomorrow, destiny, is determined by what we think, say, and do, meaning what we sow today. S-O-W. It is not the devil that brings us undeserved punishment, or God who gives us undeserved rewards. In almost every instance, because of the law set up by God, as you sow, so shall you reap. These things come to us as a result of decisions made by our own higher self and by us at a conscious level. This really means that these things come to us as a result of the decisions that we at that higher level have made. The higher self decides that these things are needed in order to help us because we at a conscious level have made decisions that were not as wise as they might have been. The higher self therefore knows that we need to learn and master the lessons of life that are associated with these unwise decisions in order to help prevent us from repeating those same unwise decisions. These sometimes difficult lessons our higher self knows we need in order to help us make a more wise decision should we be faced with the same or a similar situation in the future, either in this lifetime or a future lifetime. This is the reason we choose to come here, incarnation after incarnation, until we have mastered or learned properly all of the needed lessons that this life has to offer. We can then go on to higher things. It is hoped that this statement will, upon close study, provide greater insight into why our unwise conscious decisions bring about a decision by our higher self to bring to us the sometimes difficult lessons that are needed until such a time that we have learned them properly and no longer make the unwise decision. God is not some anthropomorphic being who arbitrarily interferes in our lives for his own purposes. God never interferes in the individual lives of humankind unless, and this is a very important unless, a person asks God or the Christ to come into their life, take them, mold them, make them what he wants them to be, and to use them in his service as he will. This must never, never be done as a thoughtless, casual act. It will change your life, and it will be ultimately for the better. It may not seem like it at first, however, because depending on your situation, it could turn your life seemingly upside down for years. The reason for this is that part of the process of being prepared for a life of service includes settling up old karmic debts so that there won't be a hindrance in the performance of that service. Is there any sacrifice, though, that would not be worth making in order to attain what was attained by the hero of the book, Pilgrim's Progress, no matter how many years or even lifetimes it may take? If a person makes that decision and then makes that important request in the manner indicated and means it, then God can and will, either himself or through his agents, come into that person's life and work with them to help them attain that request. If there are instances when lessons need to be learned because of one's negative acts, thoughts, or so forth from the past, then God may allow Satan or other negative forces to act as his, meaning God's, agents to deliver the negative karmic lesson. But this happens only with God's permission and at a time and in a manner usually decided upon by the higher self. The same is true for many of the tests and trials that some of those who give their lives to God must endure along the way. In the end, however, the reward is truly great. These sacrifices, tests, and trials are much of the substance of what the hero of our book, Pilgrim's Progress, experiences and endures in this wonderful story, The Pilgrim's Progress, as I said. Although the story was written by John Bunyan many hundreds of years ago, the principles involved are timeless, and the story is one from which we can all derive great benefit. In addition, if you're fortunate enough to read an edition that includes part 2, then you'll experience the warm inner glow that comes when you find that some of those who did not at first see the wisdom of his decision to leave home in order to serve God, those same ones have now followed him to the final reward, as you see his wife and children arrive and join him. Their arrival at the final beautiful destination, like his, is symbolic of the attainment of Christhood. This book is highly recommended. I thank you for watching. You're now invited to watch the next video on meditation and on the subject of consciousness and communication with the higher self. Once again, thank you very much.